All right, today I'm joined by Jeff Camire. Jeff, I know through high school, he was an athletic trainer at the time, but he's been a coach, he's a school counselor, now a business owner, which I want to talk a lot about. Jeff, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So we go back, God, I was thinking like 25, 27 years ago. Was the head trainer at Biddeford High School when I was there?
Yeah.
Or at least one year of me playing sports. Right?
Yeah, I was the head athletic trainer there, and it was kind of through UNE at the time back then, but yeah, I was there for a few years, and I remember you being there, and it's a long time ago.
It is a long time ago. I have my 25th high school reunion coming up in a couple weeks, so that means it was 26, 27 years ago. So I did not realize that was through UNE.
Yeah, it was just because this was really before athletic trainers kind of were able to contract, I think, by themselves, because since then, I think right after, within a couple cycles of athletic trainers, that's when they came in full time. And I think now, I was also doing some work after that. When I left Biddeford, I went to work at Saco Bay Physical Therapy, and I was kind of doing both at the time, but then I started to do some outreach with them too. And that's really what's happening. I think now I'm thinking of the trainers at Biddeford and Thornton now kind of have some other connection to like Southern Maine Health or something. But yeah.
Now, did you think that that's what you were going to do in your career back then? Like, is that not necessarily a high school trainer, but physical therapy, something like that?
Well, yeah, it's funny because well, we can sidetrack here, but when I started school in college, my goal was to be like in sports broadcasting, and I was down at University of Florida, and I'm always like, well, why did I leave? But at the time, you're just young and being away and just wasn't comfortable. And at the time, this is crazy to think about, but there really wasn't anything out there. ESPN was a thing, but CNN used to have a late night sports show, and then it was ESPN. That was it. So to try to see where things have come in that field now is crazy. And I may have stayed in that had I, had it happen now. But I think at the time I was young and I wasn't sure what to do. So I came back to Maine, and then I was applying for the PT major at UNE, and I applied late. So it was more in the spring. So they said they only had at the time a certain amount of spots for that. So they were like, well, you can, you've been in school, so we can maybe athletic training is a similar type of a field. So I did that. And then that's kind of how it all played out. So, I think for me, athletic training, I enjoyed it, but at the time it wasn't where the field is now. So I may have also stayed in that too. It's just, it wasn't sustainable with the way things were set up for me at the time. But
is that
but I also knew, financially, it was just really tough. So I just started to, I wasn't, just wasn't happy. And I decided that I was going to go back for my master's, and met with someone I knew from UNE, Al Schenkel. He was a great guy. And we went through and did some career counseling, and school counseling came up really strong in my profile that we did. So I looked into the program at USM and got my master's through them. And then that's kind of how I got where I am now.
How long has it been now that you've been a school counselor?
This is my 22nd year at Thornton.
No kidding. Yeah. So are you one of a handful? Or are you the head counselor, or how does that work?
We have about 6 counselors for our regular population. We have another counselor that works with the international students, and then we have a director. We have a lot of support here. It's actually a good situation in terms of that, because I know there are other counselors that don't have as many colleagues, let's say, to lean on. But yeah, it's good. So it's gone by very fast. I can't believe that this is year 22.
Yeah, that's wild. Mm-hmm. But it did put you in a position to be able to coach as well. And you've been coaching golf now for how long?
So I finished my 21st year this year.
I had no freaking clue. So, I knew you've been coaching, but I did not realize it's been 21 years. Oh my God.
Yeah. So I started as a JV coach for 9 years, and it was Mike Verrier, who's the Maine Golf Hall of Fame. He was my baseball coach in high school, and came up to me before my senior year and said, what are you doing in the fall? And I was like, well, I'm probably going to get ready for basketball. And back then we didn't have AAU or any of this stuff. So I was just going to probably just go to the gym when I could. And I think he said, why don't you play golf? And I had played golf for a good, when I was younger. My dad introduced it to me about 6 or 7 years old, and I really loved it. But he passed away when I was 9. And
Oh, okay.
so I tried to stay involved for the next few years and kind of lost that connection to it until he kind of sparked that back in me. And so I joined the team, and, I wasn't very good. We had some really good players back then, and I think that team finished second in the state. But I wasn't, at the time, it just got the juices flowing for me again for golf. And then I just stayed with it through college or here and there, just like, people do. But then when I got to TA, that was my first year in the fall, and he popped into my office and said, hey, he's like, Jeff, you're going to be my JV coach next year. So I said, okay. And so then that's kind of how it happened. And so I was 9 years with him as a JV, and then I just finished my 12th season as varsity coach. So it's been fun, and I mean I love coaching golf. And I've been involved with basketball quite a bit as well.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's
What's different about golf? I've never played golf on a team outside of just hanging out with the buddies and playing on the weekends or whatever. But like, how is it different to coach something like golf versus basketball? A team that's like an individual sport, but also a team sport to some degree.
yeah. Well, I mean, at least for me, I know as you know, because I know you play golf. Golf is just such a different sport in terms of the mental side. I mean, it's all the same when you break it down, but there are so many individual moments in golf that can lead you in good or bad directions depending on how you're handling it. And so for us, like the way we I really put a strong emphasis on the team aspect of it and that's just the culture that I'm kind of going from what Mike Verrier started, but and within that, we try to really break down decision making, because once the season starts for us, it's so fast. So a lot of their work has to be done as far as swing changes and all these things. That has to be done off season because we only have essentially 8 weeks once the season gets going. So
you want to swing it locked in, right? Mechanics are locked in.
Yeah, you're not changing it in 8 weeks. Yeah, right. So we just focus on pretty much 3 areas. It's course management, then the short game, and then the third area, this is kind of where I started to notice this is an area I became interested in, was the mental side of the game, because it is so much more noticeable in golf. And I mean, anybody that's listening that has ever played golf knows exactly what I'm talking about, because you can play basketball, you can play football, you can play baseball, whatever sport it is, and you're going to deal with some of these things. But because the games are faster and they move, you don't have time to dwell in it. And with golf, it's such there are so many things that are out of your control that factor into the game that people have trouble kind of keeping out of their psyche.
I have to smirk as I'm listening to you talk. It's like, I know. I mean, trust me, I know. It's just, and I like you said, anyone listening knows you're standing over the ball, you shank one, and you got to walk to your ball, and you got to all the things that are going through your mind, and it really is unique in that way. So you started a business because you wanted to address it. You wanted to help other athletes, because even though golf is different from this point of view and things move faster in those other sports, there is a benefit in all sports, probably in life, to be able to focus on the mental side of things. So the business you started is Mental Edge Performance. Tell me about it.
Yeah. So it's been a while. I think it probably, when I first started getting a real big interest in this and starting to do some work around it, was 2014, 2015. And then I've just slowly built things from there. And it was 2 years ago where I finally said, you know what, I'm just going to dive in and start to work with people. So I did that in the winter of 1 year, and it just has slowly been building. And I just, like you said, it's really, for me, I saw this huge need from athletic training, from coaching, even with school counseling role. You see that there's such a need for this mental piece that gets overlooked, because you see, I mean, you can see it now, and I'm sure, I know you have kids too, but as a parent, you want your athletes to get all the benefits from being an athlete, but also giving them as many opportunities as possible. And so we spend money on the travel and the the strength and conditioning, some people do the nutrition and all these things. But when you talk to anybody and say, how much of the game is mental? If I ask that, I usually ask that question to people in groups. And it's almost always somewhere between 70 and 90%.
So you're spending money on the 10 to 30%
Right.
or
So,
time, but like not this piece.
yeah. So that's the part. And I kind of say, okay, well, if that's the case, how many of us are spending 70 to 90% of our practice time or prep time on the mental game? And no one ever raises their hand because we don't do that. So my goal is if I can just help close that gap a little bit, it just gives people tools that they can then use. And it's not just, you mentioned it, but it's not just about sports. It relates to everything in life. And there's situations where you're going to be at work where you may be upset with somebody that and just how to get past that. And it all relates. So that's why I enjoy it so much.
Yeah. I think of parenting. I think of being a worker, being just a person in society, like all stuff that this probably can benefit. So what does it look like to work with you? What is that? You mentioned you did it in the winter. Is this like you have an 8 week long session? I mean, I kind of picture like a counseling session to some degree, but like, what's the whole thing look like?
Well, that's the thing too. Yeah. Cause it's that was when someone asked me about this before, they're like, well, your background and all that. And I was like, yeah, so I have the coaching piece. I have the athletic training piece. So I understand injuries. At least I don't claim to know what I did because you quickly forget things when you're not using it every day. But I have an understanding of what an athlete goes through with an injury. And that's a huge piece for a lot of people. But then I also have the school counseling background. So when you combine all of that, it is, I guess you could say it would sound like a counseling session, but it really isn't because there's just a process that I have to go through, but it's really trying to understand what the athlete is going through. And just like anything else with all of the three, I guess, things that I've done in my career, it's all really about relationship building and just getting to know somebody and connecting with them, because that's really where you're going to find success. And then once the trust is there, it's much easier to get into some things. But for the most part, it's just really following a process of getting people to understand what they control and what they don't control. And once we can kind of lay that foundation, I usually start with how to build an elite mindset and what that means. And then depending who the athlete is, I mean, there's just like anything else, like some athletes are really skilled at certain things. So they're going to pick up on things. Some people are a little bit more skilled in the mental game. So they don't need to go down certain roads because they're all, you can tell they're all set. And you can think of athletes you've probably played with in the past where you're like, yeah, that guy had it. Like he didn't have to worry about too many things. He was pretty solid. Didn't get too worked up over situations. Whereas there are other athletes where they're like, man, they really could have benefited from knowing some of this stuff. And that's where most people fall. They fall into that bucket. But that I just try to find out where they are, but I also have a process of what I want them to know. And then once we get past that, we can start to dive into specific things for them, particularly if they're active in the sport at the time. It helps a lot too, because we can say, okay, what happened last week? Or, how did we do in this last week? And go from there.
It's funny you talk about, we all know people that we played with that they were solid, and that's great. I can think of people like that, but I can actually think of a whole lot more where you'd say that guy was a head case. And I like use that term a lot, and this sounds like that's the perfect person. So, if you're checking in with them, is this like a meeting in person scenario, a 15-minute Zoom session, or phone calls every so often, or is it really different depending on what the needs of the athlete or person
it depends. I've done a bunch of things, but you mentioned Zoom. It's really, I mean, that is something that's evolved in the last 5-6 years that has become a huge tool for me in this profession, because it's so easy to just jump on and have a really good conversation. People are much more comfortable with it now, so it works really well. And as far as scheduling, it makes it so much easier, because I could say, hey, you know what? I might be coming home from practice and I'll be home at 7. Let's jump on at 7:30. And yeah, it's usually about, I would say most sessions are roughly probably no more than 45 minutes, depending on what it is, and depends on what we're doing. If I'm in kind of getting through some foundational stuff, it might be more towards the 45-minute end. But then once we're doing some just check-in and review stuff at 30, 35 minutes.
A little shorter.
Yeah.
Do parents sit in on this stuff?
They haven't, but that's certainly, depending on the age, really would be, if it's someone like I've worked with a few little leaguers, like 11, 12-year-old, and they were, it depends on the student. If they weren't comfortable, I would have no issues with that at all. But one thing I do like to do is I will follow up with the parent and let them know what we talked about. Because one of the things that's really important is the language I'm using with them, if they can then reinforce that, if they see some things. And it's been successful in that way, because it's good. Because I think for parents, again, we're always trying to fix things and try to make things better for our kids, but we don't always say the right things. So, and I know from coaching, you see and hear some crazy stuff that is just not helpful. And I think, I've seen that. And it really becomes detrimental to the player, because they're either trying to keep things together, trying to impress, mom, dad, grandparents, whoever it is, and the coaches. And then they're hearing it, from the stands. So it can be a lot for a younger athlete. And then, when I work with groups, I normally be working with one student. I think there may be some parents there, which is fine, and even working with parents, I've talked to some people about having like a parents' night and going to speak, just as far as some tips and overall information.
Have you ever considered working with other coaches? Not necessarily a TA, but I hear what you're saying. And it seems like so many people could benefit from it just outside of the student athletes. Is that a potential market for you in the future? Like a coach's workshop or something like that, where you're teaching the mental game?
That's one of the reasons why I named it what I did, because I didn't want it to be specific to just athletics, because while I love that piece, it could be to, public speaking, it could be a performer, whether it be, on stage or whatever it is. And, and I know working with businesses, just salespeople, how do you approach this or that? Sometimes it's just for some, when you hear something in a different way, it could be, I think we all know the general things that, with process and all these things, we hear it, but when you hear it in a different way, sometimes it can be helpful just to kind of make you see it differently.
Is that the next growth areas for you, the ones that you just mentioned, or are you already there when it comes to performers or just regular people? How's that for you right now?
Right now, so then I know we had talked earlier with questions. I am, for me right now, I'm trying to grow this thing, not get out there too far, too fast. So it's really been, I'm just growing it slowly, where I can at least handle it, since I have another job as well. So and it just, because it is with the coaching and, being in the school, I want to make sure I'm doing it the right way. So I'm not getting overwhelmed outside of school, but also I want to make sure I have time and not, the time to do that. So, but I found that it's just right now, just word of mouth, it's starting to pick up. And so I don't know. I mean, I'm not certainly going to reach out at this point to businesses or things like that, but I am open to all avenues at this point. I just think there's always something to learn in every different opportunity. So I'm all for it.
Yeah. So, I mean, for right now, it's just part of all of the different things that you do between coaching and just having a family and being a school counselor. I mean, do you ever see it being a bigger piece of that? Is there a time down the road that you want to see it? I mean, I don't know that a full-time job is the right word, but maybe you move on from coaching and this kind of fills that gap, or, you're just kind of happy with the way it is right now, bringing in people word of mouth.
Right now, but I mean, honestly, that would be a dream, would be if this could be something where I could do it for, my living, I guess, because I just am so passionate about it. And I would still be helping people just like I am every day. And then with coaching, I would back away from coaching. That would probably be the first thing I would do. Probably not golf coaching, but maybe basketball.
Oh, so you do still help out with basketball?
Yeah. So I was 12 years with the girls varsity TA, and then I took a year off, and then Mike Nelson asked me, kind of kept bugging me, and so last year I came back on the boys side, and so I'm back for my second year. So
Nice.
in the winter, it's tough because it limits me in my ability to meet with people. But if I find that that's becoming, I have opportunities, and basketball is in the way, I would definitely back away from that, just because it's a perfect time in terms of off-season stuff for a lot of athletes, or in season working with teams. And because I've been coaching so long, I'm fortunate to have a lot of connections with coaches and ADs. So that's another area that I could potentially get into.
Love it. So golf, you could see yourself coaching that for a long time. I mean, it's a great gig. You're at the course all the time anyway, so it's not a bad thing to be there.
Yeah. No, I am passionate about golf. It's funny because I'm really serious about coaching. So, and I know there are other coaches who are great coaches in other sports and different things, but it's just like they say, oh, I'm just there and we're coaching golf. But it's for me, it's not about the wins and losses. It's just about being able to teach the kids the right way to play, and just to see the growth that happens from a freshman through senior year. It's just great. And being out on the golf course is pretty awesome too. There are much worse places to be than out there every day after school.
And I mean, you guys get to go to Biddeford Soccer all the time.
Yeah.
It's a great course. And you guys, how many state championships have you won since you've been coaching?
So
There's a whole bunch.
Yep. Yeah. So with I was part of the 07-09 with Mike Verrier, and then I took over in 2014, and we won in 2015, and then we've had a bunch of close calls since then. And it's funny because I was thinking about that. I feel like I'm a much better golf coach now, but yeah, we haven't won. And again, it's for me, I'm not coaching for that reason. I mean, obviously that's part of, but you don't always control a bunch of things, which is what I teach. But I think that for me, it's just, if the kids can learn and have a great experience and become a better player, think better out there mentally, they have a appreciation for what they need to focus on. And, like for me, we've had it's going to be this year, we have 2 and another one from last year. We have 3 kids who are going into the golf profession. And so that tells me they at least had a really good experience with it. And so just seeing players come back and getting memberships. And, then I have a bunch of people who you probably know that said, man, I wish I would have played golf in high school, and it's just, so I think it's just a great sport for social reasons, and I just hope that when kids play for us, that they just appreciate that, one, the coaches are, we're there to help them, but also hopefully help them in other aspects of their life. And certainly the door is always open after they leave. So it's just been fun. And I know that you get the same type of thing in other sports, but with golf, it's a little bit different. And I think partly because it's something I can then enjoy with, like, some of my friends now were people I was coaching when I was just starting out. So it's kind of cool to have that, like a full circle effect.
Totally. Yeah. What a cool sport to be a part of. And Biddeford Soccer is a great course too. Like, I just love playing there. It's nice that you get to be there all the time. The kids get to play there. It's a hard course to get into nowadays. The wait list scenario is something else.
Yeah. It's bad. Good, but bad. If you're trying to get in, it's not good.
It's good, but bad. Like 500 people deep. See you in 20 years if you put your name on now. It's a great place to play.
And that's one. I'm very fortunate that I have been a member for quite a while now. So to try to coach, if you're a coach for Thornton and you're not a member, it would be certainly challenging, because I have so many people I can talk to there. But the course is really good to us, and we're fortunate. I mean, it has its challenges, but it's because there's so much play there. But I tell the kids every year that we are very fortunate to have this opportunity. We have great practice facilities, and the pro shop staff is great to us, really helpful. So And, so it's a great relationship.
I saw something a couple of years ago that I think it might have been not this past summer, but the summer before, where like Biddeford Saco had the most number of rounds played on it out of any golf course in
Yeah.
Maine. I thought that was pretty
Yes.
interesting. The place is
Yeah.
it's always
It
packed over
doesn't
there. So
it doesn't surprise me. I know, I've talked to people who are like in Maine golf, and they said that. I think I'd known that a few years. Because some courses think they're busy, and then when you get to Biddeford Saco, you're like, oh, okay, it's a different story. But
well,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, I have to call. Well, we try to get early morning tee times on weekends, so it's like 4 days in advance. We have alarms set to start calling at 6 a.m. to and then you're on the hold for 20 minutes and just to get like a 6:18 golf tee time. I don't know how other places handle it if it's like that, but it certainly seems scarce at Biddeford Saco
yeah,
for tee times.
yeah. That's a big challenge. That's a discussion that comes up a lot, and I don't know how to fix that one. But I know I'm just fortunate to know a lot of people that play on the weekends, so I can get in.
So when it comes to golf, I think it teaches a lot of life lessons. Like you're learning stuff out on the course. Is there anything that sticks out to you as a life lesson that gets learned through the game of golf?
Yeah, I think for me, what I've learned through the mental performance coaching, what it really teaches is that one, just staying present is the biggest thing. Just kind of not getting too far ahead, not worrying about what happened, which is those are the two things that golfers do. Because if they're all mad at the shot they just had, or they're worried if they're playing well or they're not playing well, they're thinking about their score. So they're already projecting, or just getting stuck in the past. So staying present and just playing shot to shot. It's such a critical thing to remember. You can't do anything else but control the shot you're about to hit. And even a couple of people that I've read and followed, but a great term is that, like, the past is not predictive. And it, like, one shot has absolutely nothing to do with the next shot, but we make all these imaginary connections. Like, just think about when you go to the range and people are like, oh, I'm having a bad day at the range, so it's going to be one of those days again. So you've already set you set that expectation for yourself, and it's usually self-fulfilling
Yeah.
at some level. So it's really just not worrying about any of that stuff, staying present, shot to shot. And then, since we can't control the results anyway, even though we think we can, it makes no sense to worry about it, because we'll just count them up at the end and see what we do. But if you stay fully focused on the shot you have, then you're going to give yourself the best chance to do what you want with the ball. And even if you do all those things, there's still no guarantee that the ball's going to go where you want it to go, or you might get a bad break. That's the cool thing and frustrating thing about golf, is that it's not we're not sitting in like a standardized football field, or basketball, softball, baseball. The dimensions change no matter where you are. The conditions change. Not only rain, wind, snow, whatever, but it could be the green conditions could change course to course, day to day. So there's a lot of things to factor in. So the only thing you can do is really just stay right where you are and try to hit the next shot the best you can, because that's something I see all the time. Since I've been doing this work, I've seen it. You probably, you're probably thinking, I do that all the time.
We're having a session right now. Like, it's
Right. And the thing is, I'm the same way. I'm super competitive, and I don't like to, I don't like to lose. But it has helped me a lot in terms of understanding, like, where I'm sitting there in tougher days, just saying, just trust it. Just keep going, be patient, and talking to yourself that kind of way, instead of, of course, you're terrible, you suck. What are you doing? And again, you're going to we're human beings, so we're going to have these emotions, but it's just a matter of not letting that emotion control your next decision. It's really, and it's challenging, because when pressure comes, when the pressure comes, that's where we typically make our worst decisions. Because if you're just out there playing around, having fun, a lot of times you're like, man, I played great today, because part of it was you had no expectations, and you were just out there to have fun, which is what we're supposed to be doing. But then you turn on that pressure, and everything changes. Your routine changes, your cadence, your tempo. So just understanding all of that stuff is a lot of what I do with athletes. But I know a lot of times I want to pull some adults aside and say, can I give you one little piece of advice? But I won't do that.
Feel free to
I
do
don't
that.
like to give unsolicited advice.
It's interesting you say that too, like what you were just talking about. I think to my early season rounds, like those first handful of rounds that I'll play in a season where I don't have the baggage of the round I had a week before, my expectations are low, maybe swinging a little bit more relaxed, playing more relaxed. And I actually, over the past few years, have had some of my better rounds early in the year. But then once you're playing midweek, you're playing every weekend, and it's August, and you've had whatever 25 rounds in, and you had all these bad shots at these different holes. And like that's when I really feel all of the things that you're talking about. I don't want to get into like the nitty gritty about how you work with people, but is this a lot of like giving people perspective, have intellectual conversations with them, trying to make them aware of these things? Or are there things that you're having people do with their body, like breathing, or just like certain physical things that you could advise them on? How does that work?
So, I mean, there are a lot of things there, but I think one, like I said, it's about controllables. So if you think of what I do, what I work, it's really about self-awareness. So becoming more self-aware. So again, you said like, yeah, when things start to ramp up. So I talk about this all the time with golfers. We all play at a certain tempo. So when we start to speed up or slow down, we could do one or the other. It comes down to breathing. We talk about breathing, visualization stuff. But one of the little things I can give you is one of the things I really liked that I learned was the concept of signal lights. So green being good, right? So when you're driving, you green, you go. And then yellow, we see a yellow light. Whenever I ask kids, I said, what do you do at a yellow light? What do your parents do? And they're like, well, sometimes, we slow down, but then someone's always going to say, well, sometimes you speed through it. And then red lights, of course, we stop. So, but when you relate it to the mental game, green would be when things are just going, you don't really thinking about much, you're just going, right? But yellow is where athletics tend to happen. And so we either speed up because we're trying to, like, think about when you hit a bad shot, you're probably like, I just want to get to my next shot and hit it again. Like that's what's going through your head usually. You're just like, so you start to speed up. Or you start to get to the point where you're like, oh, I think my hands are a little low here. You're trying to get too technical, so it slows things down. So just being aware of that, and then in addition to how are you feeling physically, where you could be, saying like, how we get when you get mad, you start to feel the heat coming up your neck or whatever it is, or if you're nervous and you start to feel your hands tingling. Those are all signs that, okay, I'm not in green anymore. So how do I get back to it? Because if I don't do anything, I'm going to red. And once we get to red, that's where you see the club toss, the outbursts, all that stuff. So next time you're at the golf course, you see someone do that, be like, oh, I bet they're in red light right now. So, so the concept and just trying to teach people what they need to do to get back to green, because you can't stay in green the whole time. So just being comfortable, being uncomfortable is part of it, but also understanding, okay, I am not where I need to be. And a lot of people don't understand that. And so they're just hoping for the result to change their mindset. It's like, well, and then, okay, now once I hit some good shots, now I'm going to start to feel better. But when we understand we can't control the results, then we have to figure out what we do control to try to get ourselves to make the next best decision. So it's fun, but it's an easy concept to understand, but the application is the part that's where we work, just kind of hitting on that. And as I related to kids, I said, let's say you're playing basketball and I came in and I showed you all these dribble moves and, these new moves, and you did it one time, then, okay, I got it. But if you never practice them, when you come into a game and need to apply it, you're not going to be functional. And that's the same thing with the mental game. So it's just getting people to understand how to rep that and then get feedback and just the accountability piece. That's the part that's where I come in, because it's essentially they're like drilling, doing drills to develop skills, but in the the mental side.
That's really good stuff. And again, like I've already said before, like I think of my job, I think of a million things that all of that applies to. And I think it's very cool because I've actually never met anyone that's doing quite what you're doing. when it comes to this very specific thing around giving someone the mental edge. So I'm glad to have you come on. How do people find you? Do you have website, social media? Like, what's the best way to get more info on mental edge performance?
That's probably my biggest thing right now. I don't have anything out there in terms of I have an email address that I it's just through Gmail, but I haven't done anything. And the website is something I've thought about.
Totally.
But again, it's just the maintenance of trying to maintain a website but that's my next move in terms of getting myself out there. I do have a business card.
No, I love it, man. I'm glad you came on because it's a step towards spreading the word on this stuff, and kind of getting it out there. Some people hear it, some people reach out, they spread the word. That's great. And then as you get those other pieces, it just can kind of grow from there. So I'm glad to have had you come on. So
I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it, man. It's good to catch up after all these years and see you around all the time. But to have an in-depth conversation like this is pretty cool. So appreciate it.
Well, no, that was fun.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, have a good one. We will be in touch.